now.
Welcome to Middlesex County Council meeting, Tuesday, May 10th at 1 p.m. And I'm going to call this meeting to order. And I do want to provide some remarks. This month brings many new beginnings. We saw the writ drop for our provincial candidates, as well as the start of the registration for aspiring candidates in our municipal elections. I sincerely congratulate anyone at any level of government who has put their name forward. Win or lose, it's a life-changing experience and a wonderful opportunity. I would like to thank County Council for allowing the County of Middlesex to participate in the CAN-WIL, which stands for Canadian Women in Leadership Project. This is sponsored by Global Affairs Canada and FCM. I, along with Councillor Elliott and the staff support of Cindy Howard and Marcy Ivanchik, feel very privileged to attend meetings with our Canadian partners in Truro, Nova Scotia. And together we will be looking forward to meeting our Cambodian partners. There are two main themes behind this project. First, to encourage more women to run for office in Cambodia. And secondly, to work with local governments to be more inclusive to women and marginalized people. I'm sure it will be an eye-opening experience knowing that this is still a developing country with a population of 16 million. More than 1 out of 4 people live in poverty. 3 out of 4 live on less than $3 a day. 1 in 4 women are survivors of physical, emotional, or sexual violence. In Cambodian society, violence against women is frowned upon, but domestic violence is acceptable, and many women feel unsafe in their own homes. Housing in Ontario is a hot topic that we discuss daily. Housing in Cambodia is 80% rural, and rural housing is usually a little over 400 square feet. It's usually 2 stories built on stilts to protect from seasonal flooding. Urban poverty is seen in the capital city of Phnom Penh. 1 in 5 people live in informal settlements and lack access to basic services. Urban poverty means that people settle in every conceivable empty space, from courtyards to rooftops, by the side of railway tracks, near riverbanks and swamps. I know it will be truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience to compare our North American way of life to the challenges that are met in Cambodia. Once again, we thank you for this opportunity to share our version of democracy with our partners in this project. Thank you. Now, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Hearing and seeing none. Any business arising from the minutes? So we have the minutes of April 26, 2022, and I'd like to see a motion to have them approved as presented and that they're adopted. The recommendations of the Committee of Whole as set out in the minutes of the April 26, 2022 meeting. Mover? Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Mayhew. Anyone opposed? Seeing none. Moving on to deputations. And then none. So inquiries of notice of motion. Any reports? New business? Any comments from councillors? Okay, so 9A, I have AMO 2022-2024 Board of Directors nomination. And this is a nomination for Ina DeViet to remain at the AMO board for representing the county caucus for 2022 to 2024. I don't think I need to read the whole thing, do I? Okay, so looking for a mover. And that would be Councillor Burkhart Jessen, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Anyone opposed? Okay, all in favor and carried. Then moving on to bylaws, 10A, we have 7166, a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement with Lind Mechanical. 10B, 7167, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the May 10th, 2022 meeting of council. So now looking for a mover for the first and second reading. Mover, please. Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor DeViet. Anyone opposed? Okay, and now I'm looking for a third and final reading. Mover. Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Mayhew. Anyone opposed? So moved. Now we're moving into the committee at whole, which is going to be at 1:06 p.m. So a mover, Councillor Vanderheyden, seconded by Councillor Ropp. Anyone opposed? Okay, so carried. Now moving on to delegations, reports of county officers. First one being 11A1 Middlesex 2046 official plan amendment consultation results. Presentation from Aaron Ohoske, Boulevard Strategy Group. And welcome, Aaron. And whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Warden. It's wonderful to be here. Just presenting an interim update on the engagement results associated with your official plan update process. As you know, your official plan update has been well underway for the last little while. As part of this process, what we undertook together with county staff was a robust community engagement campaign to make sure that anyone who wanted to have their say within Middlesex County had the opportunity to do so. So I'm here today to provide you with the results of that community engagement process. You have the full results were sent out, distributed this morning. So if you're so inclined, feel free. There's about 30 pages of detailed results. This is just a high level overview of what we heard from participants during this process. In terms of the campaign itself, it was called Middlesex 2046. And the reason for this is that we know, and you know through your work with Watson and Associates last year, that Middlesex County is anticipated to grow at a much faster rate over the next 25 years than the previous 25 years. And according to Watson and Associates projections, Middlesex County could grow anywhere between 96,300 and 115,000 by 2046. So the intent of this campaign was to frame the collective challenge of accommodating growth within Middlesex County to create meaningful discussions with residents, businesses, community organizations, and business partners as well. Could I get the next slide, please? So in terms of the methodology, how we went through this process was, first of all, even before I came on board to assist, county staff has been working closely with the Planning Advisory Committee under the leadership of Councillor Richards. Thanks so much, Councillor Richards, for your leadership and guidance throughout this process to make sure that the Planning Advisory Committee was very well informed about what was happening and had opportunities to provide input throughout the process. The process also involved reaching out to agencies, partner agencies within and adjacent to Middlesex County, as well as outreach to First Nations and other Indigenous communities who might have an interest in this process. I will say that the comments received so far from agencies are not included in the report I'm going to provide today. The highly technical nature of these comments are being considered by staff separately as the official plan is updated. With respect to First Nations communities, that feedback isn't included in this particular report because that process is still ongoing and feedback wasn't received when the report was prepared. But know that county staff is considering the comments received in the renewed official plan. The rest of the methodology was making sure that we were in close collaboration with local municipalities at the staff level, either CAOs or their designates, as well as county staff. There was a community survey that ran throughout the month of March. It was a success story. We received for the community survey about 489 responses from the community in the end, which I understand is a very good turnout for Middlesex County, so a good news story there. We also undertook virtual stakeholder focus groups with agricultural representatives from the business development and real estate community, as well as local municipal councillors were also invited to participate in a virtual stakeholder focus group as well. We hosted a virtual public open house on March 31st. I understand many of you were in attendance, so thank you for your support. And while this hasn't happened yet, there is a statutory public meeting planned for May the 24th. The target is to present a final official plan amendment to you late spring, early summer for your approval. Next slide, please. In terms of promoting the Middlesex 2046 engagement campaign, the official plan web pages were completely updated. They were promoted throughout county social media. There was a digital story map that was prepared, which was an innovative undertaking by county staff, a very engaging product. There were formal written invitations and correspondence throughout the process. We leveraged the networks of the Planning Advisory Committee to spread the word, also leveraging the networks of members of council. So thank you so much to all of you who shared or promoted those opportunities to get involved. There's no doubt in my mind that your participation was a large part in that great 489 number involved in the community survey. We also leveraged networks from local municipal partners as well. So thanks so much to your staff and the local municipalities for sharing that on your social media as well. We absolutely could not have got the results that we did without the support of local municipalities. Next slide, please. In terms of what we were engaging on throughout this process, there were 5 topics that we really wanted to hear from members of the public on. There certainly are other topics under consideration in the development of your renewed official plan. However, those topics are really related to legislation or highly technical issues, and there weren't a lot of opportunities for meaningful discussion on those. But the 5 areas where there were significant opportunities for significant discussion were, first of all, agriculture, making sure that in the wake of increasing growth in Middlesex County, that agricultural land is protected for future generations to enjoy. Same with the natural heritage system, making sure growth does not compromise the natural heritage system wherever possible. Also considering how land use can strengthen the objectives within your recently approved economic development strategic plan. And then also considering community perceptions related to development in Middlesex County, and strongly related to that, community perceptions related to housing, recognizing that if Watson & Associates projections do come to fruition of between 96,300 and 115,000 people by 2046, that's going to equate to a need of between 10,800 and 17,900 new homes before 2046. So the collective challenge, of course, for Middlesex County is how do we accommodate that amount of growth? Next slide, please. The other topics that were under consideration, we were very transparent throughout this process that there are other topics being considered. They are in large part legislation driven, but we did want to make sure we were open and transparent with participants as much as possible and made sure all background information related to these topics were available to members of the public or anyone who wanted to participate in the process. Of course, these topics being the actual population and housing projections that were prepared in preparation for the official plan update process, legislation and regulations related to source water protection, a myriad of other provincial changes which are available through a report prepared for Middlesex County by GSP, as well as other technical considerations, healthy communities lenses, and enabling language for a Newberry chapter. So we were very open with participants that even though we weren't having discussions on these topics, they're largely driven by provincial legislation, that these are areas that are under consideration as well. Next slide, please. So getting right into it, and as I said, all of the results from the community consultations are available in the report that's been circulated. But just at a high level, if we're looking at the agricultural topic that was under consideration, the first item for discussion that we spoke with participants is protecting agricultural land for future generations. And it was clear through, no matter who we spoke with, that it was important to people that as Middlesex County is accommodating growth, that agricultural land continues to be protected. And if I can put that in context, within the community survey, we asked respondents to indicate on a sliding scale of 0 to 100 how important it is for them to be, for agricultural land to be protected while accommodating growth. The average response there was 84, so very important. The other topic for discussion that was substantial was reviewing minimum sizes for new farms. So as many of you know, the current requirement within the official plan is that the minimum size for new farms is required to be a minimum of 40 hectares. So we had conversations with folks on whether or not that needs to be reduced, increased. And I can tell you that there wasn't a resounding consensus majority of folks who participated supported a decrease in the minimum size for new farms. Not a significant decrease, but a decrease nonetheless. But I can say that there were a significant number of individuals who did felt that 40 hectares is appropriate and that the minimum farm size should be maintained at 40 hectares. The next topic of discussion was allowing uses and structures related to indirect uses for farming operations. So things like agribusiness, agritourism, multi-generational housing, and housing for farm labor. And there were pretty widespread support for allowing some uses that are indirectly but somewhat related to farming operations. So support for that. We also discussed the surplus dwelling policy with participants. So under the current official plan, the surplus dwelling policy states that structures that are acquired can be severed for sale if they're at least constructed prior to 1999. So within the context of these discussions, we were asking participants if that before 1999, if participants would be amenable to a change that structures are at least 20 years old. And I can say there was widespread support for changing that to 20 years old. And in fact, there was support for considering even a shorter timeline of 10 years across many of the participants who provided feedback. Related to agriculture, we also discussed accessory building direction for our local official plans as well. Next slide, please. The second topic for discussion was natural heritage. This wasn't a significant topic for discussion. Folks who participated wanted to speak about the other areas, but I can say that for the survey responses, when asked the same for agricultural land as natural heritage system on a sliding scale of 0 to 100, how important is it that the natural heritage system be protected for future generations to enjoy? The average response there was 85 out of 100 on a sliding scale of 0 to 100. So very important. Other comments received from participants included concerns specifically related to the construction and operation of biosolids facilities, as well as general concern regarding development that it should be constructed sufficiently away from watercourses and waterways within Middlesex County. Next slide, please. Related to the economy, we spoke with participants about leveraging land use to strengthen the objectives within the Economic Development Strategic Plan. We asked participants to talk about the diversity and availability of employment options. And to put things in context, in the survey, respondents rated that at 3 stars out of 5. For high-speed internet, the availability, affordability, and reliability of high-speed internet, participants rated that 2.4 stars out of 5. Regarding quality of transportation, participants in the survey ranked that 2.2 stars out of 5. And for folks who provided commentary around that, it was specifically related to public transit. I think within the context of the virtual stakeholder groups, there was a lot of discussion about how the community transportation pilot project is a fantastic start, and folks would like to see that expanded in order to get that 2.2 star rating up. With respect to the availability of services and utilities for unemployment, that received a rating of 2.8 stars out of 5. Folks also spoke about Middlesex County's greatest tourism assets, and that those results are available in the report. But something I wanted to mention is that it was very hard to separate discussions about the availability, affordability, and attainability of housing from discussions on the economy. The business leaders we spoke with are very concerned that more and more it's difficult for employees to be able to afford to live in Middlesex County, and that is starting to become more and more of a concern for local employers. So that was, even though there is a separate topic on housing, I did want to note that housing, it was hard to extract housing out of this discussion as well. Next slide, please. Related to development, we asked folks their perceptions of growth, their satisfaction with recent forms of development, and generating ideas to accommodate growth. So when it came to general perceptions of growth within Middlesex County, 61% of survey respondents either approved or strongly approved of growth. Many who participated in the survey, and certainly many who participated in the discussions, did see opportunity associated with growth in Middlesex County. So generally support for the fact that Middlesex County has grown and will continue to grow. When we asked participants to comment specifically on their perceptions of the types of development that have occurred within the past 5 years within Middlesex County, 43% either strongly approved or approved. And when we asked them to elaborate on their responses, what we heard is that there needs to be a greater range of options for folks, especially as it relates to residential housing options. And then there were some individuals who do feel it's important to retain the existing character and the rural small town feel that exists within Middlesex County's communities. Next slide, please. The last substantive area that we spoke to folks about during the community engagement campaign was housing. Now, when we asked folks to comment on the availability and affordability of housing within Middlesex County, out of that 5-star rating, the average response was 2 stars, which isn't surprising given housing prices in the county and indeed throughout Western and Southern Ontario. When we asked folks what options should Middlesex County consider to accommodate that anticipated demand between 10,800 and 17,900 new homes by 2046, the general consensus that we heard was that all options should be on the table. All options should be on the table to make sure that Middlesex County has the tools and its local municipalities have the tools it need to accommodate that growth, but especially to generate options that are going to be affordable, that are going to be suitable for the average household incomes within Middlesex County, that are going to be suitable for first-time buyers, for seniors, and of various other groups. So all housing options on the table, but there was particular support for townhouses, row houses, apartments, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. And when we asked folks to tell us more about the types of development, the types of housing options they would like to see, a lot of them related it back to the need to protect agricultural land, to protect the natural heritage system. And we received a lot of commentary that Middlesex County's communities and the county itself should really promote building up, but not building out, not contributing to sprawl and impeding farmland and natural amenities for future generations. So that was a big topic of discussion that came up. Next slide, please. So not related to those topic areas that we just went through, but some other comments received from folks who participated was the need to make sure that advance notice is provided to affected residents and property owners when development proposals come in. That there needs to be seamless collaboration across planning partners to make sure there's that seamless approval process in Middlesex County. And there was support for continuing to expand dialogue with First Nations communities and First Nations individuals as it relates to planning and other processes that might be of mutual interest. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps in this process, the immediate next step is to prepare for a public meeting on May 24th. That's a statutory public meeting that's required under the Planning Act, and the statutory public notice has already been provided. All of these comments are going to be considered and are being considered by county planning staff, and a official plan update will be provided to you for approval late spring, early summer of this year. Next slide, please. Just lastly, I wanted to again extend my thank yous. Thank you to all of you for promoting this community engagement campaign throughout your networks. And special thank you to Warden Warwick, who was very involved in the process and very involved in many of the, if not all of the virtual stakeholder groups. And of course, thank you so much to the local CAOs and planning staff who participated. And a very special thanks to Dirk Vanderwerf and his staff for their leadership and guidance throughout this process as well.
Thank you, Erin. And I think it's us that should be thanking you, because it was a great report, and the more involved report is worthwhile reading for anybody who may not have had time to read it yet. But it's been a great process, and I think we all appreciated having you at steering us along in the right direction. So I'm just wondering if there's any questions for Erin at this time, Council. Councillor Vanderheyden.
Yes, thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to Aaron. Very interesting report. Thank you. And I always love data backing up the report because that makes sense to me. One of the things that I wanted to mention was I think it is really important that we do talk about natural heritage. It's not just farmland we have to worry about, but trees and all the different things that keep our communities going. So I'm glad we put that in there. And on the housing piece, I can speak from experience in my own community that we've had urban boundary, the urban envelope where we're allowed to build for years, actually. But people didn't realize that was the boundary because nothing really happened until you either got sewers and water and now everybody wants to build. So suddenly that urban envelope that's been there for years and years is like being snapped up. And I think to your point of perception, people are perceiving that suddenly we're gobbling up land that we had no right to gobble up, which was already in the envelope for 20, 30 years. So that's interesting to me, the perception piece. But I guess my point to all of that is that down the road, while we're all doing our own official plans, that's where the rubber hits the road, because we now know that we need to probably extend some of our boundaries. And what do we do with that? And that's I think where the rubber, as I say, will hit the road, is when we have to start making decisions to make that envelope bigger. If we can't find suitable infilling and opportunities that will make for taller buildings. And I mentioned to council before that we had 3 public meetings at our council meeting last week, and at all 3, it was not in my backyard. Like, everybody's all in favor of doing all of this infilling and, semis and apartments, but as soon as it's anywhere near their neighborhood, it becomes a huge political hot potato, which we as strong leaders have to mitigate.
Well, thank you for those comments, Councillor Vanderheyden, and it would be nice to take the politics out of planning at some point in time. That might make everybody's lives a lot easier. I'm not sure about the planners, but is there anybody else that also wanted to comment on this? Councillor Mayhew.
Thank you, Madam Warden, very much. Aaron, I had the pleasure of sitting on that planning committee, and I must say that I think one of my first questions or suspicions were, when you ask for opinions, do they really end up in the paper? And as you went through that presentation, I can remember the dialogue from committee members that really showed up in that report that you've just given, and I compliment you for that. It's nice to be asked for an opinion, but it's even nicer when you can see that that engagement that committee had really is formed part of the report. So I want to commend you for that. It's just a joy to go through it, and I think we'll be well positioned to reach 2026, and beyond.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? If not, then we have a recommendation that the report be received for information. So looking for a mover, Councillor Elliott, seconded by the chair of the planning committee, Councillor Richards. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, then that moves as carries. Thank you again, Aaron. Now moving on to 11A2, proposed plan of subdivision for the Pemic Thorndale Land Corporation. And we have a delegation from Craig Linton. So I'm not sure if Craig's here yet. There he is. You would think it was Clinton doing the presentation.
He's just coming in here now. And
Craig, can you hear me? Are you there yet?
he won't be able to hear you yet, Warden. He's
Okay,
still connecting
yep.
down there. Oh, there he is.
Welcome, Craig. And whenever you are ready, you can start your presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will just run through this really quite quickly here. Everyone's, I think, has probably had a chance to read the agenda. So again, I'm Craig Linton. I work on behalf of the proponent of the subdivision in Thorndale. Next slide, please. I just did this as a really brief summary of how drastically things have changed in the last couple of years. This should not be news to anybody. We have lots of immigration coming from other countries, and we also are experiencing a lot of net migration from the GTA because things are, generally speaking, more affordable outside of the GTA, but that is obviously having the effect of making things less affordable for the typical people in the Greater London area. Next slide, please. In Thorndale, there's really not a lot of variety of in terms of housing. There are some mobile homes, semi-detached, single detached homes as well that are on a pretty wide range of lot sizes. I assume there are some duplex and triplex units. Maybe there's a few houses here and there that have been duplexed or triplexed, but we don't see anything in terms of a lot of true medium density development like stacked townhomes, or we don't see any real apartment buildings or anything like that. Next slide, please. When we look at the demographics, you do want to provide for as wide a range of population as you possibly can in any given development. We're proposing, possibly some one-story attached one-story townhomes, and that type of housing form appeals to the empty nesters. And I've been told time and time again by a variety of people in the Thorndale area that is a housing product that Thorndale is sorely lacking. And then first-time home buyers could very well be attracted to a two-story townhome or semi-detached type of product. And the semi-detached product has been quite popular in Thorndale in the past as well. And then we're also proposing to do a fairly wide variety of single-family homes as well. Going from about 33, 34 feet wide up to, I believe it's about 55 feet. So a fairly wide range of housing product there to appeal to a fairly wide demographic of people. Next slide, people. Next slide, please. So we've got, 102 single family homes on single detached lots, 12 semi-detached homes, and approximately 40 street fronting townhomes. So those 3 blocks that you see in the northeast section of the plan, that's where the official plan amendment comes in to allow for street fronting townhomes of some form. We don't, at this point in time, know exactly what would get built where, because we do want to leave that option open as late as possible to be able to allow a builder to identify the exact housing form that they would like to construct. Next slide, please. So this is an elevation just of a typical one-story attached street fronting townhome. So each unit is, I believe these ones shown are about 31 feet wide. And they're typically 12 to 1,400 square feet, would have 2 bedrooms on the main floor. And if someone would want to finish the basement, there would be additional living space and possibly bedrooms in the basement as well. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides, the next 3 slides actually are just of a couple of elevations of what a typical 2-story street fronting townhome looks like. So these are about 21 feet wide. Next slide, please. Yep, another elevation of something that's slightly different. Next slide, please. So this picture I took probably about a month and a half ago. This is in St. Mary's in a project that I'm involved with there as well. And so this is the actual a good example of an actual two-story street fronting townhome that we're doing in St. Mary's. And I just like to note, when we came forward with this draft plan in St. Mary's back in 2018, this plan had 130 some odd lots and about 55 or 60 street fronting townhomes proposed. And, public comments typically were pretty varied. Some people in the public said, this should be developed all on big lots, and you're forcing people to live in high density with big houses on posted stamp lots. But interestingly enough, more of the comments were saying that we were doing too much single family, and they wanted to see more density, and that was something that was coming from the public and was made quite clear by council of the day as well. And they're now changing their official plan to mandate minimum densities and whatnot. So I suspect that if we came back with a draft plan approval in St. Mary's now, we'd have to do considerably more density than what we proposed and what we're actually building out now. Next slide, please. So public policy considerations. I'm going to go over this fairly quickly because Mr. Bancroft and also Mr. Vanderwerf are much more eloquent than I in terms of relating the plan to the public policy considerations. So we have the Planning Act of Ontario, the Provincial Policy Statement, Middlesex Official County Plan, Temp Centre Official Plan, and then when we get down to the more granular nature, we get into the Temp Centre Zoning Bylaw. So, Mr. Vanderwerf and Mr. Bancroft have clearly indicated that in their opinion, the application before you is entirely consistent with all of those documents. Next slide, please. When we look at the actual plan itself, there has been consideration given to the existing Monteith neighborhood. The existing Monteith neighborhood was developed in an era where septic systems were the only option. And I believe even at the time, all of the lots involved there had to have their own private well. I could be wrong about that. So the lots are really, really huge, and they're very typical for 1980s style development in a town that did not have municipal services. So that's why you see the lots that are as large as they are. We do have now, obviously, the pollution control plant located in Thorndale, which has facilitated a great deal of development that has progressively become denser and denser over the course of time. And I had some discussion with some people, and they said, your plan is more dense than anything else that's been done in Thorndale to date. And I said, yes, it is. But had any of those particular plans come forward now, I respectfully suggest that they would be more dense than what they are. I was involved in the Norquay Foxborough subdivision. And, the day that we got phase 1 in the ground, the builder said, I wish you would have made the lot smaller. And so, we're kind of damned if we do and damned if we don't. It's difficult to look, a couple of years into the future to see what housing products are going to be the most appropriate for people to be able to purchase. So it is difficult, and we try our best to try to come up with a development that will be current still in a few years' time, because obviously it will take quite some time for us to actually get in the ground and get building permits for this site. And when we look at the selling price for those two-story townhomes in St. Mary's, they started out at $550 some odd thousand. They very quickly went into the 600s, and there's been several of those sell for more than $700,000. Homes on 40-foot wide lots you're well over $800,000. So despite the assertion from some people of the public that we're somehow facilitating welfare housing or low cut, low budget housing, is quite simply not the case. And even if we were doing subsidized housing, that is not planning justification for denial of an application. Next slide, please. Most of the homes here that we're proposing to do are single family, and so putting single family homes adjacent to single family homes is not something that is incongruous, and it doesn't mean that they can't exist together. The single family homes that abut the adjacent or the old Monteith subdivision there, we have made those lots a little bit deeper than we typically would. And they are a little bit larger than some of the lots on the interior. And also the proposed medium density is as far away from the existing Monteith subdivision as possible. So, I touched on this a little bit briefly. We have to have consideration for a provincial policy statement, the county OP, and everything. And, I could go on and on and on and pick off all the policies that support our application. I just picked a few here as an example. Next slide, I think. Is that it? I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So I again, thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to present, and I can answer any questions that you or any of the council may have.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Looking at council, any questions for Mr. Linton? Any comments? Oh, I think that was a pretty clear. Did you have your hand up, Joanne? Yep.
Yeah, thank
Go
you
ahead.
through the word. And just want to say thank you for putting a plan together that has a variety of homes. We all know how important that is right now. And frankly, I know you mentioned the comment, and you didn't mention it out of your own verbiage. You mentioned it because it's reported in one of the other letters, and that was the term of welfare housing. I find that very offensive. We all deserve a place to live and put our head and be safe. And our communities are set up in such a way that we welcome all. And I applaud you for at least putting a plan forward that doesn't just do single family homes, because that's not right now what the need is. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. Anybody else? No, I always, it's interesting because if you say, that townhouse is 600,000, then somebody will say that's not affordable housing. So if you have something that's too expensive, that's not right. And if you have something that's too cheap, that's not right. So I don't know really where you can win on this one, Craig, because I think it's stacked against you all the time. But did you have a comment, Craig?
Yeah, just on that, when I was going through the draft plan approval process in St. Mary's, the topic of affordable housing came up. And at that point in time, an affordable housing unit for purchase in St. Mary's, the calculation was about $300,000. And I had estimated that a street fronting townhome was going to cost about $350,000. And there was much consternation about that. And then lo and behold, 2 years later, when we actually do get building permits, the prices for that exact same thing started at $550,000. So the discussion of affordable housing, like what is affordable, we cannot actually facilitate development and construction of any unit in the for-profit sector that meets the test of affordability. So if you really want affordable housing, then all three governments, all three levels of government really need to come to the plate and start creating that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is that when any unit being built is relieving the housing crisis. So at any price point, there might be somebody that's willing to move up from their former $350,000 home into the 500 and so on down the road. So any units we get are going to help.
Yeah. Thank you for realizing that.
Spent a lot of time thinking about it, so it's a thing for a lot of us here. All right, well, thank you. So I think that concludes that presentation. So I would like that this be received for information. So looking for a mover. Councillor Robb, seconded by Councillor Burkhart Jessen. Anyone opposed? Seeing none. Thanks, Craig, for your time here today.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have 11A22, a delegation from Michael Barton from the Urban Planning Services.
Tony's coming in too, Warden.
Is this, are they going together, Tony and Michael, or are they separate?
Marcy?
They're separate.
Okay. I see Michael's on the screen. So whenever you're ready, Michael, you can start.
Thank you.
Coming in too, Warden.
Oh, okay.
Are they going together, Tony and Michael, or are they separate?
Michael, you might need to, if you're watching it online, you might need to turn that off.
They're separate.
Reminds you of those call-in shows when, you know, say, caller, you need to turn the microphone, your radio off.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. If we're waiting for
Yeah,
Tony to
whenever
come
you're
in.
ready, Michael, go
Okay, I
ahead.
didn't know if we were still waiting for Tony to come in or if he was ready to go. Okay, so my name is Michael Barton. I am a registered professional planner. I'm the founder and president of MB1 Development Consulting. So as a bit of background, I was engaged by some of the members of the Monteith subdivision to the west, which we heard about. So while I live and work in Oakville, I did grow up on a farm just northwest of Thorndale, actually Ilderton Road and Prospect Hill Road. And I still have family that live in Thorndale, including my brothers on Brooker Trail in Wye Creek there. So I'm very familiar with the area and the changes that have gone on, you know, in the last 40 years since I've lived there. So I currently work in municipalities across Ontario, including the GTA. So I certainly understand the current climate and need for intensification, particularly as it relates to objectives of housing availability. I tend to stay away from the idea of affordability for the reasons we've just heard. It's such a difficult term. So I think the idea of housing availability, whether it's number of units and types of units. There's also objectives related to efficient land use. So we're looking at avoiding encroachment into greenfield, agricultural lands, things like that. And then also as you get into certain communities, there's the concepts of transit and active modes of transportation and trying to support those. However, a key concern is that intensification does not get implemented at the expense of compatibility and respect for existing land use and built forms. So there's very much a dance that goes on. You know, looking at, you know, for example, you talk about putting single families next to single families. It's not as simple as is the built form the same or the dwelling type the same, but also the built form. Does it result in adverse impacts related to there's many different considerations, privacy, overlook, you know, different elements like that. So, you know, I can definitely understand that this site is intended for residential and that it probably is appropriate for some form of intensification, including variety of dwelling types and higher density. But the concern is the compatibility and interface, particularly with the neighborhood to the west in the Monteith subdivision. So I had submitted a preliminary planning review to council on behalf of the members of the subdivision. So what I'm just going to run through some of the highlights, not intending to take too much time. I know that you've probably had a chance to read this in advance. So again, really the focus was on, you know, how does this proposal, which includes a number of different dwelling types, interface with the surrounding community. So it's not so much the fact that there are smaller lots, smaller singles, townhomes included. It's more about how they're interfacing with the surrounding community and what that means for compatibility. So the Monteith subdivision does include lots that are in the order of 23 to 24 meters, 75 to 80 feet in width. and about 1,400 to 1,500 square meters. So when we're looking at the plan of subdivision that was provided, which is in the context of the land to the west, you can see how the lots that back onto the proposed land are significantly wider at the rear lot line, and you end up with many lots for those proposed lots that are 2 or 3 onto the back of one lot. So you end up with a situation where if you had similar size lots, it's not uncommon to see single back onto single. But in this case, what you're seeing is 2 or 3 singles backing onto one individual lot. And it's not just a character change, it's also concerns for privacy and overlook, and just the overall comfort and enjoyment of that rear yard amenity space. So I had provided an overview of the relevant policies that were provided or that are provided provincially and municipally. Within the context of the development itself, we're seeing a mix of singles and street townhouse units of various sizes. The smallest ones are the 10.7 meter wide lots that are located centrally in the property. The concern is really with those lots that are along the west side that are 12.2 meters in width, while the zoning seeks 15 meter wide lots. Again, when you're backing on to 23 to 24.5 meter wide lots, there's a concern about that compatibility and respect for the existing built form. So, there is opportunity to work on this plan and to try and accommodate greater availability and housing intensification within this property, but that also is more contextually appropriate. So when we look at the policies themselves, again, all of this being in my document, but just starting at that provincial level, I had identified my concerns with under the Planning Act, there's policies related to subdivision of land. So the concerns I had were whether matters of provincial interest are being upheld. So in Section 2 of the Planning Act is where you have matters of provincial interest. And the ones that jumped out to me were orderly development of safe and healthy communities, a resolution of conflicts involving public and private interests, appropriate location for development and growth, and then promotion of built form that's well designed, encourage sense of place, and provides public spaces that are of high quality, safe, accessible, attractive, and vibrant. So it also identified under the Planning Act when it comes to subdivision of land, there's also a criteria related to whether the plan conforms to the official plan and adjacent plans of subdivision. So we do see that this plan does not conform today, requiring particularly the medium density uses in there. But also then when we look at the adjacent plan of subdivisions, there was a note from the previous speaker about this being more dense than the other subdivisions in the neighborhood. And then the final element was the dimensions and shapes of the proposed lots, which is a criteria under the Planning Act as well. So then when we move to the provincial policy statement, the items identified there's section 1.1.3.3, which speaks to this is really the intensification piece. Is you're looking for higher intensity to support transit, a greater range of housing options, but there is the requirement here that this be done in a manner that accommodates and takes into account existing built stock or areas and the availability of suitable existing or planned infrastructure. So again, the concern being about not so much about whether intensification or additional residential types is appropriate, but whether this takes into account that existing built stock, which it directly abuts. Similarly, the next section there is 1.1.3.4. That's where appropriate development standards should be promoted, which facilitate intensification, redevelopment in compact form. So again, I think my opinion is, I've outlined in my report, is that the current standards that are set do seek to achieve intensification and variety of built form. So then I'm just going to move to the official plans quickly, because I'm, again, not expecting you to listen to me reiterate my my document here, but under the Temp Center official plan, there were a couple points that I wanted to mention again, and I'm just moving to that quickly here. Sorry, it was a Middlesex official plan. In the general policies, there's a note in section 2.3.5 that the lands that are currently designated in the official plans are anticipated to be adequate to meet growth projections. And the policies are to be structured that local municipalities have adequate opportunity to plan for growth. So this is where I'm mentioning that the zoning bylaw has been implemented with the intent of achieving these policies. There's a clear concept here that the policies of the plan and then the consequential zoning regulations have been implemented to encourage intensification and achieve it. So it's again, the concern here is that, and it's not even whether there might be opportunity to seek smaller lot sizes on this site or medium density uses. It's more how it's relating contextually to the surrounding area and whether that's being done here and the opportunity there could be to do that more sensitively. So again, the concern here is definitely, how does this work in, not the idea that this is a site that should be left as it is or be developed for lots on septic systems. It's really about how can this be done in a way that balances objectives for intensification with the respect and consideration for the existing built form character of the surrounding properties.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Barton. And we have a great shortage of planners in this area. So if you're feeling like you need to move back to the area, you're welcome to do so. Did anybody have any questions for Mr. Barton? And if not, we are going to ask that this be received for information. So looking for a mover. And that would be Councillor Mayhew, seconded by Councillor Brennan. And any against, any opposed? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next delegation. Thank you again, Michael.
Thank you.
Now we have a delegation from Tony Stratman. Is Tony on the screen yet?
Here, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Oh, there you are. Yep.
Yep.
So you speak, then you get highlighted. So now I see you in front of me. So welcome. And whenever you're ready, you may start.
Okay. All right, well, good afternoon, council members. As she said, my name is Tony Stratman and I live on Meadowbrook Lane, which is in the Monteith subdivision adjacent to the proposed development. I want to start by thanking the council for allowing me to delegate at this meeting. And I want to state up front that the residents of the existing Monteith subdivision have always understood that there would be an extension of our subdivision to the east, and that the extension would be different from what we have, given the availability of town sewers and the motivation to increase housing density and variety to meet modern needs. This has never been in question. However, what we did not anticipate is that we might be neighboring the smallest building lots and the densest subdivision in the entire village. And this is very specifically what the issue is, not the subdivision itself or even the housing that's proposed. It's the proposed density and the fact that we don't consider it to be in good community planning, considering current and future options that are available. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit. What we'd like is a subdivision that transitions gradually away from us and fits the character of the community, something that existing residents will be happy to support, and something that municipal and county councils will be happy with in terms of achieving overall goals of intensification. And I believe that this is achievable, but only if there's a genuine opportunity for some compromise. And this can only be done if the amendments are opposed. So to this point, a subdivision plan has been presented to us, and the municipality invited dialogue on the amendments that are required to make it happen. The Monteith community responded with more than 100 pages of letters, petitions, and what I would classify as a fairly thorough comparison of lot sizes across recent and current developments in Thorndale. But despite clear and widespread concerns from the community, the council recommended the amendments and the subdivision plan without change, as if it's the only possible plan that's acceptable. Now, I've personally read the official plans of the municipality and the county, and what is proposed is one option. It's not the only option, which is why we're appealing to the county council to oppose the amendments and consider some other options. I can add here that our appeal has the support of almost every household in the Monteith community on the basis of a door-to-door campaign that we undertook just a week ago. And the entire community is privy to all of the documentation presented here, and many are watching the delegations in support. So in terms of my lot frontage analysis, I just want to highlight a couple of things since the council members have already had a chance to view everything in detail. The first thing is the reason I chose lot frontage as a comparative variable is that it's one of the most important parameters that dictate the style and size of a dwelling that can be built. Now, it's not the only factor, but it's one of the important ones. So can I get you to turn to slide 6, please? Nope, back one more. Thank you. Okay, slide 6 shows colored dots. Actually, let me go through what they mean first. So first off, the reason I chose the frontage is because it's a good comparative variable. I grouped lot frontages by color code, with beige being the largest and yellow being the smallest single lots, and then red representing duplex and townhome dwellings, which have been divided accordingly. So what slide 6 shows, colored dots in the Y Creek plan, and then slide 7 removes the plan in the background to make the image a little more clear to read. So can I get you to pass to slide 7, please? Okay. So the specific point is that only 24% of the homes in this subdivision have frontages less than 14 meters or 46 feet. And these are outlined in black. I'll also add that I consider Y Creek to be a really well-planned and beautiful subdivision that's well suited for Thorndale. Can I get you to go to slide 8, please? So slides 8 and 9 show the same information except for the Rosewood subdivision that's currently under development just to the east of Missouri Road and south of Medway Road. Now what this one shows, can I get you to go to slide 9? Okay, so this is the same plan with the map removed. What this image shows is that approximately 39% of the lots have frontages less than 14 meters. And the other really important thing is that this image shows that the smallest single building lots are 12.2 meters or 40 feet. It also shows a nice transition away from Medway Road, which would be at the top of the slide, and the densest housing right adjacent to Missouri Road, which is also important in terms of planning. And what I've also heard, and I didn't have this when I did the analysis, is that there's plans to put townhouses in the remaining medium density blocks in Rosewood, which will obviously increase the number of small dwellings in this area and the reported percentage. And I'll add that the increased density here will not require London-bound commuters to pass through the subdivision or the village, which is actually one of the greater concerns of the high density east of Monteith. Can I get you to go to slide 10, please? So slides 10 and 11 show the lot size images for the proposed Monteith extension. Now, can I get you to go to slide 10, please? Sorry, slide 11. Okay, back one. Perfect, thank you. So this slide shows that in contrast to the other two, I would say current developments, I mean, the Y Creek one has been there, it started some time ago. Sifton is under development now. In contrast, this shows that the proposed Monteith extension has 89% of the lots narrower than 14 meters. And almost 40% of those lots are just over 10 meters, which is approximately 34 feet. Now, given lot coverage and other restrictions, this dictates a narrow, tall housing style that's more appropriate for dense parts of a larger city like London, where public transit and other amenities are available. This type of density invites issues with parking, with traffic, possibly utilities, and more importantly, does not preserve the character of the adjacent Monteith community, where relatively large homes fill the subdivision. Now, given what's happening in Rosewood and what will be available in the future subdivision on the property northwest of Missouri and Medway Roads, it makes no sense from a planning perspective to put the highest density of housing east of Monteith. And once again, this is why we're appealing to County Council to oppose the amendments, so the proposed subdivision can be modified to make more sense from a planning perspective. So to the overall question of planning, I would say respectfully that there are better ways. First of all, this was never the plan for this end of the community. It presents a compatibility issue, as Michael presented in the last presentation, and it'll result in high traffic on Meadowbrook Lane, a street that was never intended as a thoroughfare, and through downtown, since most of the new residents will likely be working in and around London. More importantly, there are better options for intensification in Thorndale that make much more sense and are far less disruptive. First, more townhouses are already planned for the Rosewood community, and these are planned for a place that's near the major roadway, Missouri Road, so it won't introduce traffic disruption in and through the community. Second, the future development northwest of Missouri and Medway roads, and this is the important one. This one can be designed from the outset for medium density housing using throughways, side streets, crescents, and courts, all in the interest of avoiding traffic issues to keep the community safe. We are appealing to the council to oppose the recommended amendments, because this is the only way that we can start discussions on concessions and other options for the Monteith plan, and to consider how it fits into the overall community plan. To this point, the amendments in the subdivision plan have been imposed on us with no apparent care for the concerns or advice of the Monteith community. Our municipal elected council members, who are supposed to be working for us, seemingly ignored our concerns, and in some cases even our attempts to communicate, and proceeded to vote in favor of the amendments despite significant pleas from the community to oppose. Our own ward councillor wouldn't communicate with me and didn't even show up to vote on the amendments at the municipal meeting. And to this end, I feel like we've been almost completely ignored.
Just a point of order, just for a second here. I think we're talking about the planning issues. I don't really think council has anything to do with this. So I think we need to stick to the actual planning issues, please, Mr. Stratman.
Okay, I've just got a couple of seconds left.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe just to speak to what we heard in a couple of the previous delegations. I actually had a great chat with Craig Linton, who reached out to me just a week ago. And I have no reason to believe that we can't come up with a compromise that would satisfy the municipality and the county in terms of gaining some increased density and variety, a plan that would satisfy the developer and would preserve the character of the community of Thorndale in the Monteith region, which has some of the largest lots and homes in Thorndale. So to close, I'll repeat something I said earlier, that what's proposed represents one way to grow, not the only way to grow. So to the municipal and county directors of planning, yes, there's nothing technically keeping us from building what's planned. That doesn't necessarily make it a good idea. So to council members, I would say, please work with the community and let us be part of the process. And to this end, please oppose the amendments so we can get to the table. Thank you.
Got to remember to unmute myself. Thank you again for your presentation, Mr. Stratman. And I think what we'll do is we'll let our planner go ahead and do his presentation. So I'll ask for a delegation, I'll ask for this delegation to be received for information. So looking for a mover. Councillor DeVitt, seconded by Councillor Corneliuson. Anyone opposed? Okay, and what I'll ask to do is keep Mr. Barton and keep Mr. Stratman on the call. That way, if there's any questions for them after Dirk's presentation, we can do that.
Mr. Linton too, Warden?
Yes, sorry, I missed that. Yep. So 3 gentlemen will stay, and then we'll have Dirk's presentation. If there's any specific questions for the gentleman that went before, then we can go from there. So whenever you're ready, Dirk. Actually, sorry, I have 11A24, which are written submissions provided by Thomas and Jean Pinkham. Are they here to talk about this? No? Okay. All right. So if we have the submissions, I'm sure council's read them. Can I have a mover to accept them for information? And that would be Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Robb. Anyone opposed? Okay, so carried, the receive for information. And then we'll go into the action item, which is 11B1, the proposed plan of subdivision and Temp Center official plan amendment for the Pemic Thorndale Land Corporation. And that report will be from our planner, Dirk Randewerf. Whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Madam Warden. So I will just spend a little bit of time just to go through so that sort of summarize my report. So it is, as you know, a residential plan of subdivision that would create 102 lots for single detached dwellings, 6 blocks for 12 semi-detached, and then 3 blocks for approximately 37 street townhouses. The overall, or the land subject to the plan of subdivision are just over 10 hectares, And then there also is an 8-hectare property that's technically outside of the plan of subdivision owned by the same developer. And that is where the creek and natural heritage features are. In addition to the plan of subdivision application, there is an amendment to the Temp Center official plan, amendment number 24. And it is basically is necessary to permit the medium density, the townhouse form of dwellings to be located where they are. The current official plan requires that 2 of 4 criteria be met, and those are outlined in my report. Amendment 24 would allow those dwellings, notwithstanding the fact that 2 of those 4 criteria are not met. In terms of location, you've seen a map already, and there would be, it has frontage and access to Thorndale Road or King Street, depending on your preference, County Road 28, and connects to Meadowbrook Lane, and the development would occur on full municipal services. Number of attachments to my report, including the amendment, the proposed plan, location map, and the local planning reports. So in terms of timeline, the plan of subdivision was accepted as complete by the county initially in March 2021. Ms. Belly had the public meeting in June. And then there was some time while they looked at local issues, and at their February 14th, 2022 meeting, Temp Center Council did support the proposal as well as adopt amendment number 24. There was an agency circulation undertaken by the county and the local municipality, and comments were either addressed during the process or can, in my opinion, be addressed as conditions of draft plan approval. And those are really to satisfy the Conservation Authority, the county engineer, and the municipality. The proposal did generate a substantial number of public comments during the local process. My report at a high level summarizes those. And of course, you've heard from applicants or neighbors today. In terms of the policy test, the provincial policy statement, I won't go through it all in detail, but it does identify the importance of focusing population growth and development to settlement areas like Thorndale. And that's seen as both as a means of developing communities, but also protecting the natural heritage and agricultural resources. PPS has a number of policies that apply, including encouraging a compact form and densities to make efficient use of land and infrastructure while accommodating a range and mix of residential uses. County official plan has similar language that talks about extending services in a logical and planned manner. And Thorndale is an urban settlement area and encourages a range of housing types, densities, and options. But the county's official plan does place the primary responsibility to develop that implementing policy to the local official plans. The lands are in the residential designation of the Temp Center. And it's also important to note, and the draft plan recommended draft plan conditions recognize this, that the property is partially within the wellhead protection area, related to the Thames-Sydenham Region Source Protection Plan, and so those policies are also addressed. And as I said, the reports that local council considered are attached to my report. So in my view, overall, the subject lands are an appropriate location for residential development on full municipal services. And I believe that the technical matters related to the road network and drinking source water protection, the Conservation Authority setbacks, et cetera, either have been addressed or can appropriately be addressed as conditions of draft plan approval. So in county council's role as the approval authority, and of course it is, as you know, it is a different role than local council considering the details of a local development. The county council is delegated on behalf of the province to review and approve both adopted official plan amendments and plans of subdivision. But it appears to me that the fundamental issue really is related, our public concerns related to compatibility, and especially and specifically compatibility with the adjacent Monteith plan of subdivision. As you've heard already, the Monteith subdivision was developed under a different planning regime at a time when sanitary sewers were not available in Thorndale, and so the lots are therefore sized to support on-site septic systems. I do give an opinion in my report that in terms of compatibility, and that the proposed development does not, in order to be compatible, it does not have to be the same or similar to the existing development, the existing lot sizes and frontages, et cetera, on the adjacent lands. So in conclusion, both for the plan of subdivision and amendment number 24, I am of the opinion that the proposals as recommended by Temp Center Council are consistent with the PPS, they conform to the intent and purpose of the county's official plan and Temp Center's official plan, represent sound land use planning, and that approving them would have regard to the decision of council of the municipality of Temp Center. And the report gives an overview of the alignment with the County Council's strategic focus, et cetera, and 2 recommendations are included.
Okay, thank you, Dirk. Any comments or questions for our planner? Councillor Elliott?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So I kind of had this big, lots of comments about what I want to say about this, but I think Erin highlighted a lot of it in her report regarding the consultation, public consultations for Middlesex 4046. And I think the public had made it very clear that housing attainability and availability is a crisis, and that's even before we begin to grow. The public made it clear that all options need to be on the table, and that we need to expand the range of housing options available, and particularly the highest percentage of those who participate in the service and the survey acknowledge that we need townhomes, row houses, apartments, as well as tiny homes, and all the while protecting our agricultural land. And the big discussion point on that was that we need to build up and not out, and not sprawl into our farmland and outside of our urban growth boundaries. Throughout the pandemic, we've seen our communities struggle through the various challenges that our housing market faces. And we, as leaders, we need to take bold steps to build resilient and welcoming communities that welcome everyone. You know, we've had these conversations on housing as we've undergone our official plan review in Temp Center, and specifically here in Middlesex County through Middlesex 2046. And Erin also touched base on a couple items I wanted to highlight, including the housing playing a huge impact on our ability to attract and maintain industrial businesses in our communities. And we heard this throughout the duration of the Economic Resiliency Task Force, and specifically in Thorndale, we've heard it from the business owners in our industrial park, that this is a huge concern for them. And they are working with Cindy and Taylor with our transit project to try and get transit to work, because attracting people into Thorndale to work at our businesses is something that we struggle with. To go back to protecting agricultural land, I think is frankly common sense, but again, from the public consultation, it was a huge priority. And a couple months ago, Crispin Colvin, who lives in Thorndale, he's formerly a Middlesex County Councillor and our director for the OFA, was on the Craig Needles podcast, and I recommend everyone listen to that episode. But he was also at Ontario Good Roads Conference speaking about the same issue, and that was OFA's homegrown policy, and the fact that, to no surprise, we have to protect our agricultural land. And OFA's proposal to do this is to encourage municipal councils like ours to increase density within our urban growth boundaries, to address the housing stock, and to stop building seas of single-family homes on large lots sprawling across our agricultural land. The type of proposal in front of us is exactly what the OFA is talking about supporting. I obviously will be supporting this proposal, as I did at Temp Center Council. And I just want to say that suggesting that our councils are by supporting this proposal and I quote one of them is pushing high density welfare housing and suggesting that these proposals should be built on the other side of town is wildly absurd and inappropriate, and by definition NIMBYism, which Councillor Vander Hayden mentioned earlier in her comments. As leaders, we need to take a stand against that. And I just have to say that I'm embarrassed that comments like this are coming out of my community. Mr. Barton earlier said that there was a support for density intensification, but just not here literally in his clients' backyards. To say that this proposal doesn't conform because it doesn't match, as Dirk had has alluded to, that the conformity simply means it will not adversely impact the neighborhood and negatively impact Monty Subdivision. And to suggest that someone will adversely impact your property because they live in a smaller home on a smaller lot, or they rent their home, is absurd as welfare housing is being used. Comparing the subdivision to a subdivision that was approved over 12 years ago, like the Y Creek subdivision, that was a completely different planning time. And we've even seen in Temp Center, and I know others have seen it, is that subdivisions that we approved just a few years ago are coming back to us to want to put in more density as the market changes. We do have our transit pilot project in Thorndale, as well as this location is a walking distance to our library, our community center, our baseball and soccer fields, and other amenities. And putting this density here does create a vibrant and a walkable community in Thorndale. So I will absolutely support this, and this application is supported through the Provincial, County, and Temp Center directives, and I would ask that our fellow councillors support this plan as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Vanderheyden, and then Councillor Burkhart-Jessen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Warden, through you. When I read all of this documentation, I read it very carefully, all of it, and I thought, okay, in here and even in the comments I've heard, nobody's really opposed to a subdivision. It's just the type of subdivision. And so I go back to, and I quote the words from our planner's document, that that the Monteith subdivision was developed under a different planning regime. That makes total sense. That's why they're on, that's why they're large lots. That's why they have the septic the way that they have, you know, that makes total sense. It is a different time. And the next one was in his opinion that the test of compatibility is not that a proposed development is the same or even similar to the existing development. The primary test of compatibility is that the proposed development and existing development are capable of existing together in harmony. And I believe that to be true. So those are two of the items in the last report that I'm hanging on to, and my former comments as well. And so I will also be supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burkhart-Jessen, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. And through the warden, I'm not going to spend a lot of time since Councillor Elliott and Councillor Vanderheyden have spoken quite well in favor of this report and what's in front of us, and I too will be supporting it. I do think that it is important that, and it has been highlighted, that you know, drafts of subdivision and plans that were drafted, you know, years ago, and not even a large amount of years ago, have changed because the demand for the different types of housing has changed. And developers are developing communities based on what the market is demanding. And, you know, I can see that in my own community. I can see where plans have been put forth for a certain product being offered and has now changed because that's not what the market is driving. I think, you know, Dirk summed it up very well when he said compatible does not mean the same. And, you know, this will fit in quite nicely with what's happening in Thorndale. To Councillor Elliott's point, it's walkable. It is close to all the amenities in town. And I do think that the neighbors at the end of the day will be pleased with what's in front of them.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, Council? Okay, seeing none, then we have two recommendations here. I'm just going to read them. That the proposed plan of subdivision granted draft plan approval, subject to conditions that a notice of decision be circulated as required by the Planning Act, and that the notice of decision indicate that all written submissions received on the application were considered, the effect of which helped to make an informed recommendation and decision, and that amendment number 24 of Municipality of Temp Center official plan be approved, and that the staff be directed to circulate a notice of decision as required by the Planning Act, and that the notice of decision indicate that all written submissions received on the application were considered, and the effect of which helped to make an informed recommendation and decision. Mover? Look at Councillor Brennan, and seconder, Councillor Ropp. And any opposed? Seeing none. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us for your delegations today. And now we are moving on to 11B2, disconnecting from work policy. And Jessica, this is your report. So whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Warden. On December 2nd, 2021, the Government of Ontario enacted Bill 27, the Working for Workers Act, which amended Ontario Employment Standards Act. Bill 27 established a requirement for employers with 25 or more employees in Ontario to prepare a written policy on disconnecting from work. The policy before you has been established in compliance with Bill 27 and to support employees' health and wellness, minimize excessive sources of stress related to work or workload, and to ensure that employees have the ability to disconnect from work outside their normal working hours. It is important to note for Council that the regulations under the Employment Standards Act on disconnecting from work have not been released. So in order to meet the deadline, we had to bring the policy as drafted, which is the June 2nd, 2022 deadline. However, the regulations are anticipated to provide guidance on the applicability of the policy regarding 24/7 operations, on-call standby, and managers, supervisors, and executives. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the disconnecting from work policy.
Any questions? Councillor Burkhart-Jessen?
Thank you, and through the warden, thank you very much for this, Jessica. I just have one question and a comment, and I guess my comment is, I think it's sad that we have to have a policy about disconnecting from work, and that that there are workplaces out there. I'm not saying one of them is ours, that are out there that have put employers in a position with having to actually spell out that employees have a right to disconnect from work. That being said, I just wondered, when I read your report and when I read the policy, the proposed policy, I want to make sure that it extends to not just staff, employees, but also to management, because I do think that management also has to lead by example, and I don't want to make sure I don't want to have our managers feel that they need to be sending something out at 7 p.m. at night, or at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I know that I know how my schedule works, and sometimes that's the time that I am doing work. I never have an expectation for replies, but I would hope that our management wouldn't feel that they need to be on their phones, on their emails 24/7 as well.
And Councillor Vanderheyden?
Yes, thank you. I always find these kind of interesting as well. And I've been around long enough. I've heard enough. We have amazing citizens across our county, but I've heard comments before to me saying that our staff are their staff because they're their employees, because they work for our municipalities. That's not the case. Our employees work for the county corporation, and in such they have the right to have time off and are not required to be there 24/7 at everybody's beck and call. And I truly understand why we need to do this, even though I agree with Councillor Burkhart-Jessen. It's just sad that we have to put it on paper. The only thing that I want to make sure is, and I read the document fully, and I think it's all there, but just to be sure that there's enough room to allow for all the different shifts and time requirements that we have with our emergency vehicles. And that would be all of our works, our roads, employees, our EMS, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's not just a matter of we have people working in a building from 9 till 3 or 9 till 5. We have other things that we need. The lodge has different shifts because that's when you need the services. So that's the piece I don't want to end up giving us heartburn. Send that to, but probably to you, Jessica, and then you can feed whoever you need.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the warden to Councillor Vanderheyden. Yes, that is it is covered off in there. It is, again, very generic because it is, whether it's covered off in an employment contract, a collective agreement, there's different various ways we cover off our shifts. So it is very vague in there. We are hoping that the regulations do provide us with some greater flexibility in there around 24/7 operations or on call, especially with our roads worker in the winter. They haven't really given us guidance. So it's kind of been hard to draft this policy to be comprehensive. So the policy is a bit generic. It's wide ranging to cover it off. I'm hoping that once the regulations are out, we can have a more comprehensive policy. We're also trying to draft a policy that we're not providing a greater right than what is currently in the Employment Standards Act. So, and then to the point that Councillor Burkhart-Judson made, right now the regulation, this new, the new bill doesn't actually exclude managers. So we could actually interpret that the managers also have the right to disconnect between their standard hours. We are anticipating that they will come out with some generalized terms under the ESA at some point. Hopefully, you know, it would be nice to have that before June 2nd, but they haven't done that yet. So we've kind of created a very generic policy, hoping to create a more comprehensive one when we have more details.
Any other questions? All right, so we have a recommendation in front of us, looking for a mover. Councillor Mayhew, seconded by Councillor Richards. Anyone opposed? So moved. Now moving on to 11B3, the revised 2022 Middlesex County Council meeting calendar. And that, Marcy, that's your report.
Thank you, Warden Warwick. This is an updated meeting calendar. We are proposing to move the July meeting forward 1 week and cancel the June 28th meeting. So it's a quick report, but the recommendation is that the revised 2022 County Council meeting calendar be approved as presented, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No, looking for a mover then. Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Anyone opposed? Okay, now moving on to correspondence and information items. So in the correspondence, I have 11C1 all the way down to 11C8. Is there anything anybody wants to discuss individually? Seeing none, then I'm going to ask for a mover for those items. Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Ropp. Anyone opposed? Okay, and now we have 11C9 all the way down to 11C15. Are there any comments about those? Anything that needs to be pulled out during those comments? Councillor Vanderheiden.
Thank you, Madam Warden. It had to do with the last one, and that was a letter from Oxford County. And I know we had this discussion at our last meeting about planning and what the bill is going to do and not do, and how we're still kind of confused about this. So I don't want this one to fall off the table quite yet. I don't want to make a notice of motion, but I don't know if there's a time where we need to address this and have a letter sent on our own. I don't believe in copying their letter, but you know, we had a report from County Council at our last meeting, and I'm still very concerned about the ramifications of this bill on us as a county, and even on the lower tiers. So I'll just throw that in there so it's in the minutes, and so that when we decide that we need to do that, we don't forget.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. And it crossed my mind that we should actually be writing a letter ourselves. I mean, I think, you know, Bill 109 affects everyone across the province, and you know, it's a lot of these times these things to get rid of red tape causes more red tape. So I think that it's important that we understand that. So I'll leave it up to council if that's something that you wish us to do. I mean, I'm more than happy to work with that and go along, or endorse this letter is fine too. Yep, Councillor Vanderheiden.
Do we need direction, or do I need to do a notice of motion at the next meeting, or is this something we can say we would like to see about writing a letter? So we kind of throw that out there already.
Why don't we draft one up, Warden, and then share it with everybody over the course of the next 2 weeks before the meeting, and then you can have something to sort of throw darts at and get it right for your meeting. Does that work?
Yep, that works for me. Does that work for everybody else? Okay, good.
Marcy's writing it down.
Yeah, she's scribbling like mad beside me right now. So again, going through 11C9 to 11C15, that we've got a motion that we receive for information. So looking for a mover, Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Vanderheyden. Anyone opposed? Seeing none. Any inquiries? Okay, our next meeting is May 24th, 2022. Announcements. Oh, remember this, everybody. Thursday is Middlesex Municipal Day, May 12th, 2022, and we're very proud to host at the Thorndale Community Center and looking forward to seeing everybody. 2022 Middlesex County Wardens Charity Golf Tournament, June 23rd. Get your clubs out. I know some of you are already planning on playing before that. And now I'm going to ask that the Committee of the Whole rise at 2:35 p.m. Looking for a mover. And Councillor Vanderheyden, seconded by Councillor DeVitt. And looking for an motion to adjourn. And I saw Councillor Richard's hand up, so he's doing that, and Councillor Elliott, and I don't think there's going to be anybody against that. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone. It looks like a wonderful day, and see you next meeting.